Hello and welcome to the revision lecture series of TYBA English Literature, Mumbai University. I'm Dr. Preeti Oza from St. Andrews College, Bandra, and today I'm going to talk on uh, paper number 9, that is film and literature paper. I will just share my screen now and we'll start with the topic and the title. So this is a revision lecture series and I'm going to talk, as I said, that on the paper number 9, that is film and literature. It is an elective paper. These are my details here. Before beginning, I would like to acknowledge Sri Vijay G. Jadhav sir, Honorable President, Padma Shri Anna Sahib Jadhav, Bharatiya Samaj Unnati Mandal, Shri Balakrishna Ji Kale sir, Honorable Executive President, Padma Shri Anna Sahib Jadhav, Bharatiya Samaj Unnati Mandal, Dr. Ashok Ji Wagh sir, Principal of BNN College, Bhiwandi, Dr. Sudhir Nikam sir, Head of the Department and Chairperson, Board of Studies in English, University of Mumbai. I will start with the syllabus first. As this is a part of the elective paper, the scheme of examination is like this. Total 80 marks for written exam and 20 marks for the project work. In the written paper, there will be 4 questions of 20 marks each, and the time limit for this paper is 2.5 hours, but then it might now it will be subject to change depending on the guidelines issued in the wake of the COVID-19 series. So this is not the final decided paper pattern, examination pattern. So please follow the guidelines issued time to time by the university agencies. Coming to the syllabus part of it, in the unit number 1, the syllabus is giving us some critical approaches towards the film study analysis. And in this approach, in this module, we have total 4 different approaches: gender-based approach, Marxist approach, psychoanalytical approach, and post-colonial approach. And recommended films to understand these approaches and to identify the elements of these approaches are Mirch Masala, directed by Ketan Mehta in 1987, Metropolis of 1927, Vertigo, directed by Alfred Hitchcock in 1958, Satya, Hindi movie by Ram Gopal Verma of 1998, Chinking Express, and In the Mood for Love, both directed by the Hong Kong filmmaker Wong Kar-wai. Unit 2 of our syllabus is talking about adaptations. So we are going to deal with definitions and various approaches which are involved in the process of adaptation, defining the concept of adaptation and understanding the literal, traditional, and radical translations of the source text. Recommended film for this particular module is the name itself is Adaptation, released in 2002, directed by Spike Jonze. Unit number 3 of this syllabus is dealing with novel to film, and we have 2 options here, and we are going to discuss Passage to India, written by E.M. Forster and made into a film by the director David Lean. So these are the 3 units we are going to discuss during the course of our discussion of the revision lecture. Now, as I've told you that the examination pattern, this is of course subject to change, but as of now, um, the first question will be an essay type question, which will be in the um, form of, I mean, the first question, and sorry, it will be um, short notes from the unit 1. Question number 2 will be essay type long answer questions. You have to attempt any one out of two from unit 2. um, Question number 3 will be again long answer descriptive essay type question. You have to attempt any one out of two from the unit 3. And the fourth question is of the short notes, um, which will be um, which will be given from the unit number 2 and 3. And the student has to attempt any two short notes out of four, 10 marks each. Now, directly going to the unit number 1, that is the critical approaches towards the film analysis. So I would like to start with three different kinds of approaches. First one, as we all understand, is called the semiotic approaches. Under the semiotic approaches, we consider two prominent approaches. First one is the realist approach, and the second one is the formalist approach. As the name itself is telling, realist approach is true to life. It is focusing on the use of film to represent the reality, which is actually based on the power of filmmaking tools. And the formalist approach is basically about the form, montage, or maybe the construction of the film. Through the formalist approach, a filmmaker can combine various meanings into one film. It usually evolves from the juxtaposition of the film shots, and usually, just like a text, it also manifests into a conflict during the course of the juxtaposition. After semiotic, another kind of approaches can be divided under the structuralist approach. Under the structuralist approach, the first one, what we understand, is the mythic approach or the mythological approach. It is based on thematic and myth-based archetypal consideration. And when we consider the mythical approach or mythological base to understand the film study, we are talking about a myth, which in itself is a pluralistic form, and it can be discussed with some specific myths uh, by virtue of their preeminence, which are usually found in any society, any culture's aesthetic artifacts. The other approach is called the political approach, which is also usually interest based and relies of the theories with their specific perspectives, which are based on the socio-political economic conditions of that period. So via this approach, the film and the relationship which are interconnected, they focus in the areas of history, ideology, economics, or maybe social criticism. Another one, another approach under the structuralist approach, very major approach to consider to understand the film studies, is the feminist approach. It is concerned with the patriarchal power. It pursues the breakdown of the oppressive hierarchical society structures, especially from the women's point of view. And the feminist approach, which is usually also known as the gender-based approach, they are interconnected and they both analyze the treatment of women as they support or they negate the role of women in contemporary society. After these two divisions, we have some more approaches in the film studies, which are called, first one is called the psychoanalytical approach. Uh, this is basically the application of psychoanalytic theory given by Sigmund Freud. Also, the parallel version is given by Jacques Lacan. So we might use the Freud and his theory of maybe Oedipus complex or Electra complex to discuss the relationship between characters. We are going to discuss the examples for this particular approach in the coming slides. Another approach to discuss some particular film in a specific context is known as the sociological approach. This is an intersection of art and society, how they impact each other, how they use sociological concepts such as class, status, interaction, social organization, or the larger concept of culture. Uh, for example, one might look at American History X to examine the roles of socialization and deviancy in American culture. Here we also can discuss Indian history and politics to understand colonial Indian society through the films which are based on this particular approach. Next one in this series is called the phenomenological approach. Phenomenological approach is basically putting the stress on the viewer or the audience perception of the film. That means the film is usually made as an open-ended statement, and the film may take us to the journey into the interior of the mind. This approach is concerned with the manner in which viewers perceive the film or the viewers process the images and finally come to the conclusion, which is not sometimes directly implemented or suggested by the filmmaker. One might examine the spectator's perception of an autobiographical film with this reference. So, most of the time, when we are looking at the first person narrative, which are usually based on the autobiographical elements, maybe of a filmmaker or the other dignitaries, the audience is open to go for his own perception and understanding. We have some very contextual approaches also in this series to understand and to discuss films. And under the contextual approach, one of the most important way to understand the film is called the author studies, or maybe the directorial style. Author is basically taken from the word author. So we have got many filmmakers across the globe, those who have created their own style of filmmaking, and which is usually a very signature style. So we identify this kind of a style of the film with one particular person, or maybe the filmmaker or the director. So um, here in these kind of films, um, assumes a certain amount of directorial authority in the film production. So the film focuses on the style or the making, and it manifests in these elements which are very typical, signatory, unique to these filmmakers. We can always consider Alfred Hitchcock or Potter or Lynch or our own Satyajit Ray, or Nolan in the category of author studies. Another one to identify with this is called the genre studies or the genre approach. Common narrative structure convention focuses on the narrative structures common to film. Usually, the kind of texts or the plots or the narrative structure we identify, and we put these kind of films into a particular category called westerns, or maybe the war films, or maybe the musicals, or the gangster films, comedy, melodrama. These kind of genre are usually popular and easily identifiable also. Categorizes film according to the specific characters. So sometimes we can identify a horror film or maybe the war film by the use of the characters which are created to make this film. Now coming to our first element of the unit number 1, that is the gender-based approach. This approach encourages is a study encourages us as a viewer to go through the process of gendered filmmaking. So these are two different words here. One is the gendered filmmaking, and the other one is gender approach to analyze the film. Uh, it is a study of the gendered spectatorship. So here the onus is equally put on the viewer to be a part of this creation of gendered spectatorship. So the issues of sexuality, gender, representation of women, and other such contexts, other such topics are used to discuss any film from the gender perspective. We have two important words here to understand. the gender approach. First one is the gaze, and the second one is the female spectator. So, considering the way that the films are put together, many feminist film critics have pointed to what they argue is the male gaze that predominates, usually in the classical Hollywood filmmaking also, and we can also identify in the regular Hindi film or maybe the Indian film. So this is a quote taken from Laura Mulvey saying that what counts is what the heroine provokes, or rather what she represents. She's the one, or rather the love or fear she inspires in the hero, or else the concern he feels for her who makes him act the way he does. In herself, the woman has not the slightest importance. We all understand a very typical stereotyping of any woman character, what we call a heroine, and I quote, unquote. So the heroine, and in what we call a commercially viable Hindi film or Indian film, or to some extent even the Hollywood films, it is always the damsel in distress which is being saved by the knight in shining armor. But this kind of very loud representation, what we all have experienced, we all have seen, can also be into a very subtle kind of exploitation of women on the screen. We will be coming to that in the later slides. So a very important essay for all of us to understand the idea of male gaze is written by Laura Mulvey in Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema. So what she's saying that in cinema, women are typically depicted in a passive role that provides visual pleasure through scopophilia. This is a very important word for all of us to understand. An identification with the on-screen male actor. That means the camera follows, usually in this kind of an approach, in this kind of a study, when we try and identify the element, the camera follows the eyes of a man, not only sitting in the cinema hall, but also who is acting it out on the screen. That means the male actor. So I quote, in their traditional exhibitionist role, women are simultaneously looked at and displayed with their appearance coded for strong visual and erotic impact, so that they can be said to connote to be looked atness. I mean, this is a very important phrase for all of us to understand, that to be looked at ness created on the screen by the filmmaker is something which is now being a little problematic in the study of gender studies approach. So what happens in these kind of films? In a film, a woman is the bearer of meaning, not the maker of meaning. That means the meanings are already established by the filmmaker, or maybe as a part of the story by the male character also. So she is no more a maker of meaning, she is just the bearer of the meaning created by somebody else for her. Now we consider psychoanalytic theory of Jacques Lacan also to understand the gender approach of film studies. So how film creates such a space for female sexual objectification. Exploitation through the combination of the patriarchal order of society and to place a woman's body into maybe two different perspectives here. One is to put it through the patriarchal order of the society, and second is to put it through the male gaze. So looking in itself as a pleasurable act of scopophilia. So a very extended, camera movement, sometimes very uncomfortable close-ups, very laid back, camera, very slowed down camera movement. Freeze frame to some extent also is used to create that kind of a pleasurable looking. So cinema satisfied a primordial wish for pleasurable looking. Why it is happening? It is happening because cinema is a cultural practice for all of us. So myths about women and femininity and men and masculinity. That means we are already working on our programmed understanding, which is very clear about the polarization of women and femininity, men and masculinity. So myths about sexual differences are produced, reproduced, and equally represented on the screen. So the stakes of feminist film theory are very high. In the early years of feminist film theory, Laura Mulvey wrote that the woman would be better off discarding patriarchal cinema altogether. Women would welcome the destruction of the satisfaction, pleasure, and privilege that only serves repressive mechanisms in Hollywood cinema. But this quote, this statement is equally, implemented, applicable to even the Hindi cinema. So there is always an inbuilt tension between politics and pleasure. So the feminist film theory is focusing on this very inbuilt tension between politics and pleasure. And the tension has been very productive sometimes, considering a very strong development that feminist film practice and feminist film theory have undergone in past some 20-30 years. And here we have in our syllabus the film called Mirch Masala, for all of us to look at this film from the gender perspective. 1987 film Mirch Masala, it was an adaptation of the screen on the screen from the writer Chunilal Madia's short story Abu Makrani. It's a Gujarati story based in Gujarat, a small town of Gujarat. And here, the entire polarization, socio-political and sexual, it is very, very clearly established right from the first frame. So women are subjugated to deep-rooted patriarchal oppression. Girls are forbidden to attain a proper education. Characters, almost all the characters in the film are naive and illiterate, completely unaware of current events gripping the country. When for the opening scene of film Mirch Masala, it is giving us two different worlds, inside and outside. And this kind of inside and outside, with just one main door, which is opening up a completely new world, internal world, interior world for all these women staying together, is a director's take to consolidate first the women pain, and at the end to consolidate the women power. It is a searing critique of the patriarchal society and men who abuse this power. Finally, in the end, when the film progresses, poetic justice is achieved by getting the Subeda punished for invading illegally into the feminine territory. But the main character, the strongest point in this film is the character of Sonbai, which is played by Smita Patil. So the character, the way she asserts her own sexual autonomy and agency by refusing to succumb to a powerful male figure's demands. So this assertion first is the identification of her own self, then the assertiveness of her own self, then the complete provocative, nature of the other events and incidents, and finally the way she converts her inner strength into getting some revolution out. So this is what is the strength of the unity, which is shown by the women in fighting their oppressor, that forms the pivotal moment in the film. The film establishes a very revolutionary sentiment amongst women. In this film, class of women, economic class, is again used as a very strong category, which enables us to historicize gender in the perspective of the class differences. We can also trace the development of this concept of class as a gendered parity through this film. So evolution of man-women relationship in society or of gender politics, while it has its own internal logic at times to operate independently of class differences. So when the film progresses, the class difference, which was very strong, that means the in-house internal inner world of women, outhouse completely open world for man, and only one man was the link between the internal and the external. Gradually the class differences gets little submerged, little diluted. So such perspectives of the gradual building up of a tension. It also specified the gender relation. After this, second approach in our unit number 1 is about the Marxist approach. It is a very recurrent theme in the history of cinema. Many contemporary filmmakers apply a Marxist approach to filmmaking, and usually it has gained the popularity in the second half of the 20th century. The reason being this, that usually when the American studio system was going through the recession in 1920s and 30s, some of the Soviet filmmakers, they have started experimenting with the films, and Sergei Eisenstein was the first one among these many Soviet filmmakers, those who have introduced the idea of Marxism through the filmmaking. Uh, Eisenstein's solution to the classification, or maybe the class conflict, which was very easily visible in that era of Soviet Russia. So the solution given by the filmmaker is to shun the narrative structure by eliminating the individual protagonist. That means the entire linearity of the plot was little neglected, and the juxtaposition, the kind of a collage sort of a filmmaking, what we call the montage, has come into picture. And through the new style of filmmaking, the Marxist approach is gradually, you know, introduced, developed, and established by first by Soviet filmmakers. Then it has caught the attention of many filmmakers, including Indian filmmakers. So, what is the strategy here? The strategy is to tell stories where the action is moved by the group and the story is told through a clash of maybe one image against the other. So the image can be a composition or a motion or the idea. So the audience is never lulled into believing that they are watching something that has not been worked over. So this could be clearly considered as a socialist manner of filmmaking or the film narration. We have a beautiful film here called Metropolis to understand the Marxist approach of filmmaking. Uh, Fritz Lang um, has made this film in a style of German expressionism. German expressionist technique is being used, and this film examines the differences between wealthy and working classes. The film's entire, idea is based in a science fiction sort of a setting, futuristic plot. The film talks about 2026, and the main plot is that a wealthy city ruler's son, Fredo, begins to notice that the great differences or the clashes between the wealthy and poor, and he has started believing that he can be the prophesized mediator who can deliver the working class from their slave like labor. This film has many elements of Marxism, and the film also uses a lot of interesting religious symbolism as well to deliver a very strong connotation. It's a combination of spatial and gender elements to highlight the Marxist approach. It makes for a complex depiction of class conflict in an economically stratified society. So, because of the German expressionist filmmaking techniques, we actually see a complete polarized world, or maybe the juxtaposition of the dichotomy here. So, the tall and short buildings, the rich and poor, the dark and light. So, these are very prominently juxtaposed here to show the stratification. Political and economic gulf between the capitalist and workers seems impossible to bridge. So, when we talk about Marx's concept of history, there can be no resolution to the immutable conflict between the exploiters and the exploited. Rather, the process of dialectical materialism ensures that the conflict may end in a revolution. But a new class of exploiters will arise and a fresh conflict will begin. That means it's a cycle, it's an ongoing process. So this seems more likely than rather sentimental ending of Metropolis, that the revolution will be started by the new exploiters, with the new generation. And here I would like to give an example of our own film, Hindi film of Shyam Benegal called Ankur. In that film also, we have the last scene where a small child from a poor family, he comes out and throws a stone on the landlord's house. So this is a freeze frame where the revolution has already started, passed on to the new generation, and they have taken it up very well. So the similar kind of concept is being used in the film Metropolis also. Psychoanalytical approach, the third one. The interaction of human minds with the environment that they are surrounded with, which makes the human change in behavior a very systematic study of psychology. So the films based on this approach, they believe and they show the moving images on the screen to the people with a very deep impact of perception or maybe the cognitive ability of human minds. And a moving image is very beautifully used to capture these nuances. Um, the psychoanalytical approach, when we talk about, the early researchers have subjected to the experimental research, but later part in the history, the research on the impact of watching certain themes and genre like sci-fi or maybe the horrors or maybe the thriller, they have created a ripple in the psychological current where the cognitive ability in the knowledge used to analyze the scenes in the brain. So initially, when this particular theory or the approach was used to analyze any film, as the area was little considered a taboo, filmmakers were not very open to discuss it openly under this particular approach. So they have selected some specific genre like science fiction, horror, and thrillers to touch upon the psychoanalytical elements in the filmmaking. So, what are the characteristics? A method to investigate the the mystery behind the thoughts and the unconscious activity in human mind can be analyzed through psychology. Freud in 19th century brought forward the psychoanalytical process on films. Initially, it was in the text and the stories, and gradually applied on the films also. So the 1940s, we have started getting the initial, identification in the films, but by the time 1970s, the theory was very deeply established and it has started taking shape uh, with a strong cinematic element. Two renowned individuals brought forward the psychoanalytical theory, Sigmund Freud and Jacques Lacan. And these two theories put forth the development in the film theories like feminist film theories also to some extent. So, to discuss this in detail, we have five main psychoanalytical approaches in the film criticism. The first one is called the cultural myth. The second one is called the filmmaker's own biographical relevance. The third one is the analysis of characters which appear on the screen. The fourth one is the reception by the audience. And the fifth one is providing a complete parallel like a dream sequence or a dream screen. So all these elements are used very effectively by multiple filmmakers. We have for our studies a beautiful film by Alfred Hitchcock called Psycho. And when we look at this film and try and find out the psychoanalytical elements in this, or maybe try to analyze this film from the psychoanalytical film criticism perspective, it's a prime example um, how the psychological thrillers have been made and have been impacting the audience. Uh, Alfred Hitchcock has formed a very archetypal basis of all the horror films on this particular approach of psychoanalysis. The theme in this particular movie called Psycho is bases itself on the unending subconscious battle between good and evil that exists in everyone through the audience's subjective perception and which is passed on to the characters on the screen. So how what are the elements we can actually identify in this particular film? It is with Marion's character that Hitchcock first introduces the notion of a split personality disorder to the audience. So throughout the first part of the film, Marion's reflection is often noted in several mirrors and windows. So we have two prominent elements. One is the mirror, and the other one is the window. So window is providing us a much needed entry into that room of the character, but again it is using a complete voyeuristic pleasure used by the filmmaker himself. So Hitchcock is able to create a voyeuristic sensation within the audience, and it can visualize the effect of any situation through Marion's conscious mind. For example, when Marion enters the secluded bathroom, um, in order to have the privacy, Hitchcock's camera follows very clearly, and a very convenient placing of the mirror there in that scene, it conveys the sense of an ever lingering conscious mind that makes privacy almost impossible for the character. Hitchcock brings the audience into the bathroom with Marion and allows it to struggle with its own values and beliefs, while Marion makes her own decision and continues with her journey. So for the first time, the inner and exterior part of the character of Marion is being um, projected through various filmmaking techniques. The split personality motif, as I've told you, is a very pertinent motif. It battles, Marion battles both sides of a conscious. Um, Also wrestles with the voices of those that her crime and disappearance has affected. The audience is compelled to recognize or sometimes to even identify as to why it can be so easily identifiable, or why they can so easily identify the wrongful actions of Marion rather than his virtues and the call for virtues. So Hitchcock conveys a very intensifying theme in Psycho that bases itself on the subconscious battle between eroticism and death. Significantly, various concealing shadows throughout the film are also employed, and this particular experiment, this particular technique is taking the voyeur's curiosity level to a very high class. I mean, the the gradual rising of the curiosity level of the voyeuristic people is intensified during the course of the film. He also distinguishes between horror and tension very skillfully by making sure that the enough tension has been built up to be broken by horror. So finally, the horror is not a death. The horror is the way the death has been culminated. The scene of the death has been culminated. After this, going to the next new approach, which is called the post-colonial approach. It is a very defining paradigm all across the world, and post-colonial theory has critically contributed to revisiting the representation of the other. The other, as that means the process of make otherization has already started, addressing the long-standing tropes and stereotypes about cultural difference and racial otherness. Colonizing a territory is a type of jurisdiction that runs and dominates a colonized place. We have many examples in Indian literature and Indian films where the colonization is captured, maybe in the flashback, in the socio political context, in the emotional context, in the identity politics context also. We have two beautiful films here for the discussion under this approach. Um, First one is the Chungking Express, and the other one is In the Mood for Love, both directed by a very established, talented Hong Kong filmmaker Wong Kar-wai. Uh, Both the films, basically, they represent the world cinema, and uh, both the films are talking about a very intimate relationships between space and identity in the newfound world, which is no more colonized. But then, because of the colonization process, how the stereotypes are still working in the same way. Uh, Wong Kar-wai has made some beautiful films in the post-colonial Hong Kong, and some of the important films are Days of Being Wild, In the Mood for Love, 2046, As Tears Go By, Chungking Express, and Fallen Angels. Uh, Wang's use of cinematic space involves the analysis of his selection of location. So the location is a very much city space, but the city space is not connecting the characters the way it has to, the way the audience anticipates. Strategic employment of the mise-en-scene, camera angles, lenses, lighting, and music, they all constitute a kind of a fictional world. And it is very difficult for us to identify with that kind of a world. So the construction of Hong Kong in these films, it responds to the formation and transformation of the individual identity as against the identity of the city. It also showcases the impact of colonialism, modernization, decolonization, globalization, and postmodern culture upon the lives of Hong Kong inhabitants, Hong Kong uh, citizens. So with this, the first unit is over. So the first unit, as I said, it will be used for the long answer questions, any two questions, essay type, or it may be used for the short notes also. With this, coming back to the unit number 2 called adaptations. Very first question when we talk about the film adaptations comes the concept of fidelity, trueness, copy, interpretation, or verbatim. Adaptation is a process that takes place from one genre to other. It can occur in all sorts of media, books, movies, TV shows. So in many adaptations, there are things that are added and there are things that are removed or taken out. So in order for it to be an adaptation, you need to stray away from some of the original ideas and put a twist on them to make them your own. The most important challenge, or the most usually uh, found challenge in the process of film adaptation is the source text, and to what extent the fidelity to the source text is being retained, copied, or completely cancelled. Some of the most creative adaptations take place because the infidelity takes in. That means when the source text is no more being copied to the large extent, there are chances that we are going to get some really creative adaptations or creative, um, creations of films. A way many writers help to bring an audience into an adaptation is weaving events in history that the modern society at the time they can relate to it. It is easier to like and understand something if you can feel a part of yourself in it. So we have seen some historical movies, some modern movies where the partial adaptation or maybe a non-linear adaptation has been accepted here, and we can actually identify where the event is kept to the actual documentation, but the characters are being added to it, or maybe the characters are retained to the originality or original document, and the location or maybe the setting is completely changed. So in both the ways we are talking about a little liberty or maybe a little deviation from the fidelity of the source text. We have Linda Hutcheon um, essay on adaptation. So Linda actually looks at adaptation as a secondary work from the original. So what she says is, and I quote, when we call a work an adaptation, we openly announce it in overt relationship to other work or maybe multiple works. So they are universal. They are repeated with variation constantly. That means for her, adaptation is a constant process. She believes that because adaptations are repeated with variations, consumers stay interested because the story becomes so well known. And when we look at the relation between film and literature, we all know that initially when the filmmaking process was started, the sources were usually the established literature. That means the stories, the biblical stories, the religious stories, novels, popular novels. So these were the bases for the um, initial level filmmaking process. So somewhere down the line, we have been using the adaptation process with a sort of liberty as a filmmaker. Uh, Financially also, it is better to produce an adaptation of an original work according to Linda Hutchin, because the original work has already proven itself successful. But again, this remains a question for deliberation. Now, when we talk about the theories of adaptation, how the novels are converted into films, how the stories are converted into films, we have some film theorists, Andre Bazin, Bella Bazalis, and George Bluestone, and Sergei Eisenstein. They have their own understanding about how a novel or a source text can be accepted or adapted into the filmmaking. For example, Bellas is of the opinion that the film script is an entirely new literary form, whereas Bluestone is of the belief that the novel should be regarded as a potential raw material only to be transformed. So that means what you are going to create with the help of that raw material should not necessarily copy or completely follow what was already written or said. So when we define the concept of adaptation, we basically discuss three elements: understanding the literal meaning or literal adaptation, understanding the traditional adaptation, or understanding the radical translation of the source text. That means almost a complete deviation. Going back to the definition, Oxford English Dictionary defines adaptation as um, plurality of meanings and applications, most of which allude to the process of changing and to suit an alternative purpose, function, environment, and that alteration of one thing to suit the other. That means one media to suit the other. But adaptation is a very dominant cultural phenomenon. So when we say it's a cultural phenomenon, we are taking um, the package of culture into picture, into consideration. So what do we mean by culture? As we all know, culture is a package. So we are talking about language, food habits, religion, thought process, lifestyle, dressing. So these are some of the basic elements. Usually they all as a package changes or transforms the entire process of adaptation. Most films are based on pre-existing sources and one with a long and rich history. Uh, so usually what we have seen is short stories are adapted into plays, plays into films, films into operas, songs into poems, so on and so forth. The concept of fidelity and transformation in adaptation. So, unquestionably, the most frequent and most tiresome discussion of adaptation revolves around the idea of fidelity of the source. So, the field is still misunderstood. The concept of fidelity to or the original source is still misunderstood by the notion that adaptations ought to be faithful to the ostensible source text. But many of the filmmakers has actually removed this particular notion. What are the different types of adaptations? We are talking about three different types. First one is called the transposition, second one is called the commentary, and the third one is called the analogy. Uh, so the transposition, the original literature work is given as it is without substantial interference from the filmmaker side. In the commentary, original text is intentionally or maybe sometimes involuntarily altered in some aspects. The analogy, which represents a fairly convenient departure for the sake of making another work of art. So these three types of adaptations are usually found uh, in the filmmaking, which is taken on the basis of a novel. Now, to understand this further, we have total four critical paradigms. The first one is called the translation. Under this paradigm, we all understand that the novel is a privileged artistic work, while the film exists to serve the literary precursor. This is the stand taken as per the first paradigm of translation. The second paradigm is called the pluralist paradigm. A successful film adaptation presents analogies between the novel and the film, thus implying that there are essential differences between them. That means when we are talking about the plurality, we basically accept the individuality of both the creations separately. The third one is called the transformation. So there are two significant assumptions here that the critical work within the transformation paradigm. First one is says that the novel and the film are two separate entities, two autonomous arts constituted by different science systems. And the second one says that the film and the novel, they often end up privileging each other by complementing each other. So these are the transformation from one to the other. And the fourth one is the materialistic concept. While the film literary source is not overlooked, the influence of that source is less important in understanding the world from which the film adaptation is taken up, comes and the one towards which it points out. So the institutional factors play a major role in this kind of the adaptation when the film is used from the paradigm of materialist. So what are the popular types of adaptation? First one, based on a true story, straight adaptation, impossible adaptation, and interpretative adaptation. So what do we mean when we say that the film is faithful to the source? Is being faithful to the source a merit considered in the film adaptation? Not always. And here, for our syllabus, we have a beautiful film. The name itself is called Adaptations. So the title adaptation here in the film, it becomes an exceptionally loaded pun because the film is talking about the process of adaptation from both the sides. And very interestingly, both the sides are represented by the same actor, Nicolas Cage, and the writer trying to convert his novel or the creation into the film, and the kind of stress, the kind of conflicts, the kind of challenges the writer goes through. That means the filmmaker and the writer are completely out of sync when it comes to the process of the adaptation. So Kaufman process of reworking Orleans' book into script from the Darwinian process of evolution also is very hilariously discussed in this film. Um, it is a method by which Kaufman's characters from Charlie to Orlean reshape their lives by putting themselves into something or someone else. So the most important challenge in this film is not the establishment of the novel, but how the conversion takes place, whether it takes place or not. So, what remains so engaging about adaptation is how Kaufman incorporates the artistic ideals of both personalities. That means Charlie and Donald, of course, played by the same one. And Donald's Hollywood blueprints are used by Kaufman sardonically. So, Kaufman has never compromised his artistic integrity for anything. As a result, his script comes from both identities, and so both Charlie Kaufman and his fictional brother Donald Kaufman received credit for the film's screenplay. It's a very interesting take of giving credit to both the one is the real and the other one is the fictional. It's a product of fantasy, truth, reality, non-fiction, and a complete artistic masterpiece. This film is the resounding demonstration as to why Kaufman remains a singular author screenwriter whose inability to escape his own artistic influence is work. So basically, he himself is creating his own signature style. But finally, what happens in the end? That is the biggest question here. So when we discuss the adaptation, especially the film, we are talking about somewhere we merge the line. somewhere the differences get blurred. And this is what is the most important, success of this particular film. Going to the unit number 3, novel to film. Uh, Limitations, techniques, potentialities of both novel and film. Of course, both will be evaluated from their own individual strengths and their own individual weaknesses. But how and what type of processes they go into making this particular process of changing a novel to a film. We have two examples in our syllabus, and I'm going to discuss the novel called Passage to India, with reference to the novel also, and how it is converted into the same film, the film which is based on the same name. So this is a film in 1984, written and directed by David Lean. It is based on 1960s screenplay written by Santarama Rao, which was basically based on the novel written in 1924 by E.M. Foster. That means it is twice removed from the main source. So novel to screenplay, novel to play, and play to the film. The novel, especially the modern novel, characteristically deal with time and the complexities of inner motivation. A film, on the other hand, basically is not equipped well to render these effectively. So what happens? It finds its forte in rendering motion and action with, of course, the kind of weapons which we usually have in the hands of the filmmaker. That means camera shots, mise-en-scene, editing, and sound. But novel and film, both, the external quality and the unfortunate compression, they require the maximum viewing time limit in the film. A novel can take 40 hours to be read and can indulge in the luxury of leisurely expression, going back and forth. But the film is at the mercy of the speeding celluloid, speeding frame that cannot be turned back, or that cannot be dwelled upon, or that cannot be diverged. So the novel can give pages to the description of minute and very lucid descriptions. In a fraction of a second, it can skip over years in a sentence, but a film has to use some particular techniques to dismiss the time. It cannot expand it, or I continue here. So a film can dismiss time. It cannot expand it or hold it back to examine it in many facets. So it is very popularly said that a novel has 3 tenses, a film has only one, that is right now, right here. So perhaps the most important part of the book is the highly compact and some abstract discussions of the nature of the time in two media. But in the film, the difference is the psychological or the chronological time. So when we talk about the Passage to India, in Mr. Lean's screenplay, which in most ways is remarkably faithful to the novel written by E.M. Foster, it also includes large chunks of very funny Foster dialogues, actual original dialogues. So there is no longer much of a mystery in the film as compared to the text. The audience knows, or at least they think they know, exactly what happened in the caves, which makes poor Aziz's trial even more outrageous than it is in the novel. So when we talk about Passage to India as a film, this conscious decision on Mr. Lean's part subtly distorts the original, but it also emphasizes some surprising revelations about Adela, the heroine, the main character, female character. Even more peculiar is Mr. Lane's decision to withhold from the audience a scene in the novel that explains Mrs. Moore's seemingly uncharacteristic actions preceding Aziz's trial. Though he has made a passage to India both less mysterious, I mean, the film Passage to India, both less mysterious and more cryptic than the book, the film remains a wonderfully provocative tale as compared to the text, full of vivid characters. Of course, the characters are suited to the sensitivity of the Western audience, because we have so many changes in some subtle ways to suit the sensitivity or sensibilities of the Western audiences also. So, what are the major differences in this screen adaptation? The movie and the novel, they both focus on the Aziz character, but the novel focuses a lot more on Aziz. Film focuses a lot more on Adela. Film is a political message, not as clear and emphasized as it was in the novel, and we all can understand the reason that when the film was made, the entire sensitivity of the British audience, or maybe the English audience, towards India was completely changed then when it was there in the earlier period in 1924 when the novel was first written. So the film, as expected, it focuses more on the relationship of the characters. The part of the novel where Adela's crush had been changed into the film to a scene where she is being chased by monkeys. Again, as I told you, to suit the sensitivity of the wider audience. So the film and the text, they both have the same meaning in the end, however, because they both result in her realizing that she does not want to be with Ronnie. So this part remains faithful to the source text. So with this, I would like to close my unit 1, 2 and 3 discussion here. These are some of the recommended reading lists as per the syllabus provided to us. Um, of course, we have to wait for the new kind of exam system. Unless and until that it comes, we are going to follow the guidelines issued by the university time to time. And with this, thank you so much. I would like to again thank the organizers of this lecture series, revision lecture series. It will be very useful to all the students out there who are scattered in various parts and not able to study for the final exams. Thank you all.